The moment fans both dreaded and expected finally arrived, the canceled podcast, the chaotic, unfiltered, and often controversial show hosted by Tana Mongeau and Brooke Schofield, has come to an official end. For over 3 years, the podcast was a wild ride filled with scandalous stories, raw confessions, viral clips, and plenty of drama that kept fans hooked week after week. But in their emotional 3-hour finale, Tana and Brooke explained why it was time to walk away. And the truth may not be what everyone assumed. Speculation had been swirling for months. Was the cancellation because the girls secretly hated each other? Were old dramas too much to handle? Or was it simply that the business side of things had crushed the genuine friendship underneath? Fans had theories, but this final episode pulled back the curtain in a way we hadn't seen before. And if you thought the ending would be all shade and fireworks, you might be surprised by just how vulnerable and honest it actually was. Because behind the laughter, clapbacks, and viral scandals, there was a real cost to keeping the show alive. And for the first time, both Tana and Brooke admitted just how heavy that burden became. But the surprising part? Ending the podcast wasn't just the close of a chapter. It might actually be what saved their friendship. But how did things get to this point? To understand, you have to look at the complicated line between friendship and business. From the outside, it seemed like Tana and Brooke had the perfect dynamic: funny, quick-witted, and always ready to spill the tea. But behind the microphones, things weren't nearly as effortless. They admitted in the finale that touring and producing the show often put them at odds. Creative differences piled up, arguments grew heated, and what used to be natural conversations between friends slowly turned into tense business negotiations. It got so bad that at one point, Tana even considered hiring a mediator to sit between them, just to get through conversations about the podcast without it turning into a full-blown fight. That revelation shocked a lot of fans, because it proved what many suspected: the show was taking a toll on their friendship in ways they couldn't hide forever. But when the decision was finally made to end canceled, something unexpected happened. Both women said they felt a wave of relief. Suddenly, they weren't forced to hash out business strategies or argue about content. They could just be friends again. That shift brought them closer than they had been in years, and for Tana especially, it was proof that letting go was the right move. Still, if fans thought the finale would be cold or transactional, they were in for an emotional surprise. For months, Tana had been saying that when the podcast finally ended, she'd feel nothing but joy, that she'd pop champagne, light fireworks, and celebrate walking away from something that had drained her. But when the day actually came, the reality couldn't have been more different. In the finale, both she and Brooke broke down in tears, reflecting on what the podcast meant to them and how far they'd come since that very first episode. Instead of feeling relief alone, they described the ending as bittersweet. On one hand, they were proud to leave the podcast while it was still successful, like walking out of a casino while you're still winning. On the other, they were closing the door on years of memories, experiences, and milestones that defined their careers. But as emotional as it was, something shifted. Since finishing their tour and announcing the ending, the two revealed they've been closer than ever, calling each other for hours, going house hunting together, and spending time like they did before the show existed. That change was their biggest reassurance, that letting go of the podcast was exactly what their friendship needed. But alongside the emotional goodbyes came another layer of honesty: the things they regretted, and the confessions that shocked even their biggest fans. For all the chaos, viral moments, and internet-breaking clips canceled produced, the finale revealed a much more vulnerable side of both Tana and Brooke. They admitted there were entire episodes and countless moments they now wish had never made it online. Tana didn't hold back when she said she was a nightmare to work with in the early days. She admitted to drinking during recordings, showing up unprepared, and brushing off Brooke's concerns when she tried to keep the show on track. It was a shocking moment of accountability from someone who built her brand on being unapologetic, and she even admitted that Brooke was right to call her out back then, even if she hated hearing it at the time. Brooke's biggest regret came in the form of what fans now know as Boatgate. She recalled the infamous story about her assistant BB during a tour stop, thinking it was a light-hearted anecdote. But once TikTok got a hold of the clip, the narrative spun out of control. What started as a casual story about miscommunication turned into a viral controversy that not only painted Brooke in a negative light, but also fractured her friendship with BB entirely. She admitted in the finale that telling the story was a mistake, and that she underestimated just how far fans and critics could twist her words once they were out of her hands. And those weren't the only regrets. Both women admitted that some of their most replayed episodes, like the infamous Turks and Caicos trip discussion, were filled with things they now cringe at. From drunken outbursts to mean-spirited commentary, there were times when their desire to entertain crossed the line into territory they wish they could take back. For two influencers who have built careers on unfiltered honesty, acknowledging that they've said things they regret was a rare look at how heavy the internet spotlight can be once words are out there permanently. What stood out most was the fact that even Tana and Brooke, two personalities known for saying exactly what's on their minds, finally admitted that not everything needs to be public. The finale showed fans that behind the scandals and the outrageous headlines are two women who have made mistakes, burned bridges, and learned the hard way that every viral moment has consequences. It was one of the most humanizing parts of the entire episode, because it proved that even the most unfiltered creators sometimes wish they could erase parts of their own story. But regrets weren't the only topic, because soon, the conversation shifted back to some of the biggest dramas that followed them into the podcast, including Ashley, Alyssa Violet, and years of unresolved tension. No Tana Mongeau podcast could ever end without circling back to the feuds and friendships that defined so much of her online presence. And in the final episode of Cancelled, one of the standout moments came when Tana and Brooke revisited the long-standing tension between Brooke and Ashley. Fans who had been clinging to the hope of a reconciliation were quickly let down. Brooke was honest about it. There was nothing to repair because there had never really been a friendship in the first place. They weren't close, they never clicked, and it became clear during the finale that they probably never will. That blunt honesty put to rest years of speculation about whether things could ever be smoothed over behind the scenes. Of course, no mention of Ashley would be complete without bringing up the infamous Guess Who birthday game, the shady gift she once gave Tana that quickly became internet legend. At the time, the gesture was seen by many as a cutting jab meant to embarrass Tana. But in a surprising twist, Brooke admitted during the finale that she actually found the gift hilarious. In fact, she said if she were in Ashley's position, she probably would have done the exact same thing. For fans, it was a moment that lightened the mood, showing that even some of the shadiest moments in their shared history could now be laughed off in hindsight. But while the Ashley situation brought some unexpected levity, things shifted when Alyssa Violet's name entered the conversation. For years, Tana and Alyssa's complicated history has been a point of fascination for fans, from social media shade to subtle digs on the podcast. Many people tuning into the finale expected this would finally be the moment Tana offered an apology, or at least some sense of closure. Instead, she doubled down, making it clear she had no regrets about anything she'd said in the past. It was a statement that shocked some fans, but reminded most of exactly why Cancelled became so popular in the first place. Unfiltered honesty without any attempt to smooth things over for the sake of public image. That lack of apology was a classic Tana move, unapologetic, raw, and willing to stand firm even when it risked stirring the pot all over again. For Brooke, the tone was more measured, but she didn't push back either, leaving fans with the impression that some wounds just weren't going to heal. Between Ashley's lingering coldness and Tana's unshaken stance against Alyssa Violet, the finale confirmed that certain feuds were never going to end with a neat bow. Instead, they remain as part of the messy, dramatic history that made the podcast what it was. Entertaining, explosive, and always unpredictable. But the drama wasn't just about friends and enemies. It also touched on love lives, engagements, and the controversies that still haunt them today. One of the most raw and emotional moments in the Cancelled finale came when Brooke addressed the whirlwind of backlash that followed her engagement announcement. What should have been a milestone filled with joy and celebration quickly turned into a storm of online accusations and harsh criticism. Almost immediately after she shared the news, rumors spread across TikTok, Twitter, and Reddit, with some users bringing up allegations from her fiancé's past. Instead of congratulations, Brooke found herself defending both her relationship and her happiness against a tidal wave of strangers dissecting every detail of her personal life. For a moment that was supposed to mark the beginning of her future, it instead became one of the most difficult and public challenges she had ever faced. Brooke admitted candidly that the backlash ruined what she had always imagined would be one of the best times of her life. The fairy tale excitement she dreamed of was overshadowed by a constant stream of negativity, with fans and critics alike speculating on her judgment, her fiancé's character, and even her future. But despite the noise, she made it clear she has stood by him from the very beginning. Brooke reminded viewers that she knows the full story, she knows the man she is marrying, and she refuses to let internet gossip dictate the reality of her relationship. That strength, though difficult to maintain, showed fans a side of her that was both vulnerable and defiant. In a rare moment of solidarity, Tana also stepped in to defend Brooke. Tana admitted that if she believed for a second that Brooke's fiancé was truly guilty of the things people were accusing him of, she would have spoken up and distanced herself immediately. Instead, she doubled down on her support, making it clear that she trusted Brooke's judgment and would stand by her through the chaos. Coming from someone like Tana, who has never been afraid to cut ties or call out friends publicly, that kind of loyalty spoke volumes. It was a reminder that even through years of ups and downs, their friendship still carried a deep layer of trust. This moment of unity between Tana and Brooke served as a powerful reminder of the cost of living life online. No matter how carefully you try to protect your personal happiness once it's shared publicly, millions of strangers suddenly have a say. For Brooke, the engagement backlash became a painful lesson in blocking out the noise and learning that not everyone deserves access to her most personal moments. And for fans watching, it was a rare glimpse into just how heavy the weight of public opinion can be when love and controversy collide. But as raw as that was, the most shocking confession of the finale had nothing to do with Brooke's fiancé. It was Tana's admission about her first real love. For years, fans speculated about the true nature of Tana Mongeau and Jake Paul's relationship. From the chaotic Vegas wedding to the constant flirty collaborations and endless social media references, their connection always seemed to blur the line between clout-chasing stunt and something real. People debated endlessly online. Was it all for views, or was there actually love behind the cameras? In the canceled finale, Tana finally gave fans the answer they'd been waiting for. She admitted outright that when the podcast first began, she was still madly in love with Jake Paul. It was the first time she openly said what so many had already suspected, and the revelation instantly became one of the most talked about moments of the episode. What made this confession even more powerful was the way Tana shared it. Her voice shook, her chest tightened, and she admitted she had always kept those feelings close, never daring to say them out loud. She called Jake her first real love and explained that during that period she didn't think she would ever get over him. Even as she tried to joke about it, fans could hear the vulnerability in her tone. While she teased that most of the deeper details would be revealed in her upcoming book, just acknowledging the truth on camera was enough to confirm what the internet had long speculated. Jake Paul wasn't just a chapter in Tana's chaotic career. He was someone who had genuinely held her heart. Looking back, Tana didn't sugarcoat how unhealthy that relationship dynamic was. She admitted she poured far more into Jake than she ever got in return, often finding herself heartbroken while he moved on effortlessly. Fans who had followed the saga in real time remember the countless videos and cryptic tweets where she looked devastated while Jake seemed indifferent, and hearing her finally put it into words was both validating and heartbreaking. She acknowledged that he didn't treat her the way she deserved, and that much of what happened between them left her with scars that lingered for years. It was a rare moment of raw honesty that showed just how much pain was hidden behind the headlines of their so-called clout marriage. For viewers, this revelation tied together years of speculation, memes, and viral debates with a dose of sobering reality. Tana confirmed that what looked like a publicity stunt actually carried real emotional weight for her, and that she had been suffering quietly while the internet laughed at the chaos. The fact that she chose to finally admit this in the canceled finale, rather than at any other point in her career, gave the confession even more impact. It was closure not only for Tana, but for fans who had always wondered what was really going on behind the scenes. And with her book promising even more details, this chapter of her life is far from finished. It's just finally being told on her terms. Scion that had been years in the making, and fans couldn't believe she finally said it out loud. And if you thought that was shocking, what came next was a mix of apologies, karmic justice, and more unfinished business. Not everything in the canceled finale wrapped up neatly with bows and forgiveness. In fact, some of the most memorable moments came when old wounds were reopened, and the hosts showed just how differently they handle conflict. Brooke took the more reflective route, admitting she may have been too harsh on comedian Matt Rife when she spoke about their brief relationship on the podcast. She told fans that, looking back, the fling wasn't as deep or serious as she had made it sound, and she regretted painting it in such a dramatic light. Her willingness to apologize showed Brooke's tendency to look for closure and avoid carrying grudges, even if it meant walking back things she once said on air. Tana, however, had a very different perspective. She flat out disagreed with Brooke's softened stance on Matt, reminding everyone that he had treated her poorly and didn't deserve the benefit of the doubt. It was a moment that perfectly captured the contrasting dynamic between the two women, Brooke seeking reconciliation and peace, and Tana holding firm in her opinions no matter how controversial they might be. This divide gave fans a raw look at their personalities, one leaning toward diplomacy, the other toward brutal honesty. Their different takes on the same story proved why Cancelled was so addictive, because neither host ever felt the need to sugarcoat for the sake of the other. The conversation didn't stop there. The girls also revisited Zach Sang, who had been caught up in the Clinton-Kane controversy that once dominated headlines. Brooke admitted she regretted dragging him into that mess, feeling that he got caught in the crossfire of drama that wasn't entirely his fault. But once again, Tana doubled down. She revealed that after learning more about Zach's behavior behind the scenes, she believed karma had eventually balanced the scales. Maybe he didn't deserve the backlash for the original reasons, she explained, but he certainly deserved it for others. That cold honesty was classic Tana, unapologetic, unfiltered, and unwilling to rewrite history just to make things more palatable. And with that, the stage was set for the final farewell, an ending that was equal parts emotional and uncertain. The canceled finale wasn't just about rehashing regrets or reigniting drama. It was also a heartfelt tribute to the fans who had been there since day one. Both Tana and Brooke broke down in tears as they reflected on how far the podcast had taken them, from a risky experiment to one of the most talked about shows in the influencer space. Despite months of online speculation that they secretly couldn't stand each other, the girls proved the opposite in their final moments on camera. Holding hands, they reminded everyone that their bond had survived every fight, every headline, and every rumor the internet had thrown at them. What struck fans most was the way they described the end of the show, riding off into the sunset together. It was a phrase that felt both final and unfinished at the same time. On one hand, it captured the emotional weight of saying goodbye to something that had defined a chapter of their careers. On the other, it hinted that this ending might not be forever. The door wasn't slammed shut. It was left cracked just enough for fans to wonder if one day the duo might reunite behind the microphones. That open-endedness created a sense of mystery that had people talking long after the episode aired. And while they both admitted they're excited to work on solo projects moving forward, they also emphasized that their paths will still cross. Tana expressed her excitement to appear on Brooke's future show, while Brooke promised to support Tana's next ventures. It wasn't the death of their collaboration, just a shift in how it would look moving forward. For fans, the finale delivered both closure and curiosity. Closure in knowing that their friendship had survived, and curiosity about when, where, and how we might see them together again. In the end, Cancelled didn't just end a podcast, it cemented a legacy of friendship, chaos, and unfiltered honesty that will keep audiences hooked on whatever they do next. But the real question is, what happens next? The Cancelled podcast may have reached its final episode, but the story it leaves behind is far from simple. For years, the show was a cultural touchstone in the influencer world, delivering raw confessions, explosive feuds, and moments so unfiltered they instantly went viral. But behind the headlines, the very thing that made the podcast entertaining nearly destroyed the friendship at the heart of it. By choosing to end it now, Tana and Brooke may have saved that bond, but it also raises a bigger question. Can they really stay out of the spotlight, or will the chaos eventually pull them back in? Both hinted at solo projects, with Tana teasing that she's ready to build something entirely her own, while Brooke suggested she's eager to host her own platform without compromise. Fans are excited but also skeptical. Will people embrace them separately the same way they did together? Part of Canceled's magic was the unpredictable chemistry between the two, their differences colliding in ways that were both hilarious and shocking. Alone, each woman has star power, but together they created something that defined an era of influencer entertainment. That's not easily replaced, and it leaves audiences wondering whether their new projects can live up to the legacy they're leaving behind. And yet, in classic Tana Mongeau fashion, the finale didn't feel like a permanent goodbye. By leaving the door cracked for a possible reunion, they've given fans hope that one day the microphones might click back on, even if just for a special episode. Until then, the end of Canceled is less of a final chapter and more of a pause, a moment for both women to grow separately while fans continue to speculate about their future. The podcast may be over, but its impact will keep echoing across YouTube, TikTok, and every corner of the internet where Tana and Brooke's names continue to trend. And if history has shown us anything, it's that their story is never really finished. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this deep dive, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next upload. And don't forget to drop a like and share your thoughts in the comments. It helps the channel grow and lets me know what stories you want covered next.